I have always believed that silence carries a sound. When the house grew quiet after Michael moved out, I heard it. A hollow, aching resonance that stretched through the hallways, like wind threading through an abandoned church. My life had been measured in the noises of his childhood. The slam of the back door when he came in from school. The pop and fizz of soda cans opened in the living room with his friends. The muffled chords of a guitar he thought I couldn't hear after midnight. Now, at 61, I lived with silence. Margaret had been gone for 20 years. It still feels strange to write that number, 20. She died when Michael was 10, and from that moment I became both parents. I cooked dinners I never wanted to cook, stitched buttons I didn't know how to sew, and worked through weeks where the paycheck barely made it until Friday, but it was worth it. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every tear swallowed. It was all for Michael, because he was all I had left. So when Michael walked into my kitchen one spring evening, taller now, his shoulders broader, the boy I raised faded into the man standing before me and announced he had met someone I wanted to feel only joy. Her name was Sophia. I watched his eyes as he spoke about her. They lit up like lanterns, the way his father's once did when he held a spark in his heart. He told me Sophia was ambitious, sharp, and beautiful. She made him laugh in a way no one else could. I wanted to believe her arrival was the start of a shared life, that I would gain a daughter instead of losing my son. But something nodded inside me when I shook her hand the first time. Her smile was perfect, a little too perfect. Sophia looked me in the eyes and said the right things. But there was something hard beneath her politeness, like glass under velvet. I told myself it was only nerves. Hers, mine, both. The memory of Margaret's warm laughter filled me, reassuring me. Give it time, people soften, people surprise you. But I couldn't ignore what came next. The phone calls stopped coming as often. The usual Saturday visits stretched into weeks. When I texted Michael to ask if he wanted his favorite roast chicken on Sunday, he'd reply hours later, apologizing. Sophia already planned something. At first, I didn't complain. Who was I to compete? Love is new, it's blinding, it consumes. But then came small cuts, little paper-thin reminders that I was not needed, not welcome. At Michael's birthday dinner, my house, my cooking. Sophia joked that his childhood photos were too many, cluttering the shelves. She suggested we update. The two looked more modern. It was said with a laugh, light as steam off coffee, but her eyes flicked across the room like a blade. Then came the engagement. Michael hugged me with tears in his eyes and showed me the ring. For one breathless second, I thought everything would be okay. Weddings bind families, love multiplies, joy heals. But the weeks that followed began the slow unraveling. I wasn't included in the dress shopping or the cake tastings. A mutual friend whispered, almost embarrassed, that she'd seen me left out of the bridal shower guest list. And then the harshest wound. When Sophia's mother sent me a copy of the family wedding photo plan, my name was missing. Missing. Like I didn't exist. I stared at the paper until the ink blurred. My hands trembled. My chest ached with a pain I had not felt since the day Margaret died. Sophia wasn't simply marrying my son. She was trying to erase me from his life, piece by piece, memory by memory. And for the first time in decades, I felt myself slipping. Because how do you survive when even the one person you built your whole life around is being pulled away from you? The first memory I have of being pushed to the edges was so subtle I almost dismissed it. It was 1 week after the engagement announcement. Michael was helping Sophia move some of her things into his apartment. And I thought I'd surprise them both with a basket of Margaret S. recipes written in her looping cursive. Margie's handwriting had Dan T. changed from the day I first met her at 19. Each letter was wide. Bold strokes, with curls at the end, always leaning a little forward like she had been in a rush to live. I thought Sophia might appreciate them. Margaret's roast chicken, her pies, her lasagna that made the entire neighborhood linger on the doorstep. It was more than food. It was love, binding us. A bridge for the future. When I walked into the apartment that evening, Michael smiled, pulled me into a hug, kissed my cheek. But Sophia's face was unreadable. I unpacked the small wicker basket, excited in my own quiet way. "These were your mother's recipes," I told them. She wanted the family to always share meals. I thought it might be nice, to pass them on. Michael's eyes softened, misting. But before he could speak, Sophia cut in. "Oh, that's sweet," she said flatly, as if she were speaking to a neighbor's child, not the man's parents standing before her. She took the notebook in her manicured hands, glanced at one page, then shut it briskly. "But we're really trying to find our own rhythm, our own traditions. Isn't that right, love?" Michael hesitated. He looked at me. Only for a second. Lips parted, about to answer, but Sophia's hands circled his wrist like a clamp. He nodded too quickly, swallowing his words. The basket sat untouched on their counter. When I left that night, I forced myself to smile, forced myself to hide the shiver of cold creeping inside me. Cooking had been Margaret's heartbeat. Passing it down had felt like handing Michael and her into their future. But in that one offhand remark, Sophia had shut the book on it. By the weekend, when I stopped by again, the basket wasn't there. I never asked where it went. Some answers don't need words. Chapter 4. Fading calls the hardest part of middle age isn't the gray hair, or the aching back, or even the loneliness of empty mornings. It's the invisibility. People stop seeing you. Your voice softens into the background of their world. You become the chair tucked in the corner, the old photograph on the shelf. It's always there, but never noticed. And now I was invisible to my own son. Michael used to call me every evening on his drive home from work. It's just 10 minutes. Traffic updates, the latest on his favorite soccer team, what he'd eaten for lunch. These small rituals became a lifeline after Margaret passed. I'd be cooking dinner and hear his ringtone, and the weight of the day would lift just like that. But when Sophia moved in, those calls dwindled. At first, once a week, then once every 2. Sometimes my phone sat silent for whole months, glowing in the dark with no name ringing on the screen. I tried to adjust. I told myself, this is what adulthood means. He's building his life. Love is supposed to expand, not replace. That was what Margaret would have wanted. But some nights, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the single dinner plate in front of me, I wondered if Margaret would be angry. She would have stood taller, spoken louder, refused to vanish, bit by bit. One night, when loneliness grew teeth, I pressed the call button myself. "Dad, hey!" Michael's familiar voice came through, warm but hurried. "Sorry, can I call you later? Sophia and I are just about to start a movie." I agreed, of course, always agreeable, always fitting myself into their schedule, but later never came. Chapter 5. The wedding divide. The battle over the wedding broke something inside me. When Michael first showed me the ring, my heart had leaped to see him so alive with love. I thought the wedding would be a beacon, a place where old wounds healed, where new bonds were knit tight. But I quickly learned that love ceremonies could also be weapons. It started with the invitations. I received mine later than everyone else, tucked in an envelope with no handwritten note, no warmth beyond the embossed typeface. My name felt like an afterthought. Then came the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't asked to speak. I wasn't given a seat near my son. Instead, I found myself beside Sophia's uncle twice removed, whose name I didn't even know. Michael glanced at me across the room, guilt-etched faint on his face. But Sophia burned holes into him with her eyes whenever he strayed too long in my direction. He never came over. And then the family photographs. At the planning session, Sophia unveiled a seating chart and photo schedule so detailed it looked like a military campaign. I scanned the paper eagerly until I realized something. There were no photos planned of me with my son alone. None with Margaret's portrait, which I had lovingly restored in a frame for the occasion. Not even a moment where the father of the groom, the single parent who had raised him, stood recognized. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said nothing. But that night, when I returned home, I pulled out the old wedding album from the highest shelf. Margaret stared back at me through photographs, so alive, so radiant, her smile looked like sunlight. In every picture was proof. Love had been real, wholly unforgettable. Now, staring at Sophia's contorted version of family, I realized something bone deep. She wasn't just asking for her place in Michael S.'s life. She was demanding mine in exchange. Kay and my son, my only son, was letting her. The first time I noticed something missing, it was Margaret's quilt. It had been a part of our living room for as long as Michael was alive. A patchwork of blues and yellows sewn by Margaret's own hands during long summer afternoons while she hummed old folk songs. She worked on it while rocking baby Michael in his cradle. Pieces of thread sticking to her palms because she never stopped to rest. That quilt was soft with years, smelling faintly of lavender no matter how many times it was washed. When Michael moved out, he asked if he could take it with him. To feel Mom around, he'd said. Tears blurred my eyes, but I agreed. I wanted him to know her warmth whenever he needed it most. But one evening, during a visit to his apartment, I didn't see the quilt anywhere. I asked casually while straightening the couch cushions. "Where's your mother's quilt? Doesn't it usually stay right here?" Michael hesitated. His eyes darted toward Sophia, who was standing in the kitchen pouring wine. She didn't stop pouring. She didn't look at me. But her lips curved in the faintest smirk when she heard my question. "Oh," Michael said finally, forcing a chuckle. "Sophia thought it might be best to, keep things less sentimental. We donated it." My stomach dropped the way it had the day Margaret died. "Donated it," I whispered. "Michael, a quilt was she made it when you were a baby. She sang to you while sewing it." "I know," he said quickly, shame shadowing his voice. "I just thought it would be okay to let it go." I looked past him, to Sophia, who finally turned a glass of red wine in her hand, eyes daring me to challenge her. In that moment, I knew it wasn't Michael's choice. One heirloom, lost, and with it, a piece of Margaret. Michael's 30th birthday should have been a milestone celebrated together. 30 was the age his father never got to reach. A milestone Margaret had once said would be proof of survival, of carrying the family name forward. I spent weeks preparing, spent hours in the kitchen baking Margaret S. lemon pound cake, his favorite, her recipe memorized in my bones. I wrapped a small box. Inside was his father's watch, polished so bright I could see my reflection in its face. I had saved it for this exact birthday, imagining the look on my son's face when he fastened it on his wrist. But the evening shattered me. When I arrived at their home, balloons filled the living room, music played, but I barely recognized anyone. It wasn't family gathered there, nor Michael's oldest childhood friends. It was mostly Sophia's circle, co-workers from her firm, her cousins, her people. Michael hugged me at the door, distracted, already pulled toward Sophia's orbit. I stood awkwardly on the edge of the crowd, holding my small box in both hands, like an old relic no one wanted. When the cake came out, it wasn't lemon. It wasn't Margaret's recipe. It wasn't even homemade. It was a towering, glossy confection from some high-end bakery. Everyone clapped. Michael blew the candles. Sophia beamed in photographs. I never brought out my cake. Later, when the crowd thinned, I pressed the small box into Michael's hand. "This was your father's," I told him, tears hot beneath my eyelids. "He wanted you to have it when you turned 30. Michael swallowed hard, emotion flickering. He opened the box, his hands shook. But before he could pull the watch out, Sophia's voice cut sharp across the room. "Oh, love, you already have a watch collection. You should keep that one safe, tucked away, maybe in storage." Her eyes flicked toward me deliberately, as if to deliver the final blow. Michael nodded. He slipped the box in his pocket without fastening the watch. I didn't speak the rest of the night. I drove home with Margaret's lemon cake untouched on the passenger seat, my hands trembling on the wheel. At a red light, I whispered aloud, "She's erasing me, erasing us." And in the silence that followed, I swore I could hear Margaret's voice. thin and fragile, carried in the air. Don't let her. The last straw came weeks before the wedding. I stopped by Michael's apartment to drop off an envelope he had asked for. It was at work, but Sophia was home. She opened the door wearing a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. I stepped into the living room and my heart froze. The wall where Michael had kept his family photographs was bare. Gone were the frames of him as a boy with his first soccer trophy. Gone were the pictures of our family vacations. Margaret's smile, my arm around them both. The shelf that once held our albums stood empty, replaced with a sleek, abstract sculpture. Where are the photographs? My voice cracked before I could steady it. Sophia tilted her head, feigning thoughtfulness. Oh, those were trying to declutter. Photos make everything feel dated. You know, they weren't clutter. They were his life, I said, my voice rising despite myself. Her smile sharpened. His life is with me now. We're building our family. You should understand that. The words hit me like stones. Our family. Like I wasn't part of it anymore. Rage choked me. Grief surged. For the first time in years, I felt something stronger than silence. I stepped closer, my voice low and trembling. I carried him when he was sick. I worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. Stood at his mother's grave with a 10-year-old boy and promised him ED never be alone. And you, I pointed at her. Fingers shaking, you don't get to delete that. For a second, the mask slipped. Sophia's eyes hardened, cold, unmasked cruelty swimming in their depths. Maybe, she whispered, you should let go. Maybe Michael doesn't need reminders of grief holding him down anymore. I left before I could collapse in front of her. But as I sat in my car, fists white on the steering wheel, one truth rose clear through the storm inside me. If I didn't T-fight, Michael would lose me forever. And that was something I could not survive. It happened 3 nights later in my own kitchen. Michael stopped by alone. It startled me. I nearly cried just seeing him without Sophia shadowing his every move. His shoulders looked heavier than I remembered, his eyes tired. Dad, he said, sitting heavily at the old wooden table. We need to talk. My stomach twisted. I poured him coffee the way I always used to, before dinners and homework and Margaret reading stories in the other room. But the warmth in this ritual couldn't soften what was coming. Dad, he began again, voice low. Sophia feels that maybe it's better if you keep some distance at least. For now, the words hit harder than any fall, harder than the day Margaret slipped from my arms into the hospital sheets. Distance, I whispered. Michael, I raised you. I was there for everything. And she wants distance. His jaw clenched. It's not just her. I think maybe she's right. Maybe hanging on to the past is hurting us, hurting me. The air cracked between us. The past. Son, the past is your mother. She loved you more than life itself. You think remembering her hurts you? He looked down into his coffee cup, unable to meet my eyes. The dam inside me broke. Michael, listen to me. You can build your marriage. You can love your wife, but you cannot let her erase where you came from. You cannot let her erase me. Your mother, my voice cracked, shaking. Your mother's memory deserves more than that. I deserve more than that. For a long time, silence stretched. Michael's hands curled tightly, knuckles white. He looked like a man at war with himself. Finally, he stood, eyes wet but hard. I need space, Dad. Please don't come around for a while. I heard a chair scrape back, a door close. The silence that followed was heavier than death. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, I broke down on the kitchen floor, sobbing into my hands until the night blurred into dawn. The days after that conversation drowned me. I didn't cook. I didn't shave. I stopped answering the phone. The house felt colder, emptier. Even the air seemed to avoid me. I walked past the framed photographs of Margaret and Michael, but I couldn't look at them. The memories burned too bright. Each image felt like a lie now, a promise I had kept only for Sophia to unravel everything with a smile. Nights bled into mornings, weeks slipped by. For the first time in decades, I considered what it might feel like simply not to go on. Survival had always been my instinct. But now, with Michael gone, with his loyalty slipping into Sophia's control, I didn't know what I was surviving for. One afternoon, an old friend George, a neighbor I had known since Michael's school days, showed up unannounced. He found me sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "You look like hell," he said bluntly, pulling out a chair. He had that nonsense voice only old friends carry. No pity, just truth. I didn't answer. After a long silence, he leaned forward. "Listen, I saw Michael last week walking through town with her. He looked, I don't know, not himself, like a captive bird." My chest tightened. George's eyes softened. "You can't give up, old man. You've survived worse. You lost Margaret and kept going. You raised a boy through fire. You don't let some girl with cold eyes be the end of you." His words scraped something inside me, something I thought was dead. That night, for the first time in months, I opened Margaret's recipe book. My hands shook, turning the pages, but I forced myself to read. Her notes in the margins looked like small messages from beyond. "Add extra sugar for Michael. He loves it, sweet." Tears blurred my vision, but I cooked again. One dish, a small step. The smell filled the kitchen with the memory of her laughter. And in that warmth, a spark returned. No, I couldn't let Sophia erase me. I would fight for my son, even if it meant breaking myself open in the process. Life after the wedding wasn't suddenly perfect. There were still cold silences when Sophia directed her attention my way, subtle walls she tried to build. But Michael changed. Bit by bit, he stopped complying with her quiet demands to silence me. He came by the house again. He picked up Margaret's recipe book I thought was gone and cooked with me like he used to. One evening, he brought Sophia along. She walked through my doorway stiff as stone, but Michael guided her into the kitchen. "Dad," he said softly, "make the chicken like Mom used to. Teach us." So I did. I guided his hands, explained Margaret's notes scrawled along the page, showed Sophia how the skin crisps golden when brushed with butter. She didn't speak much that night, but she ate. She tasted. And for the first time, she didn't dismiss it. A small crack, but a crack nonetheless. A year later, Michael called me late at night. His voice trembled with excitement. "Dad, we're having a baby." My throat closed. I whispered Margaret's name into the darkness, imagining her joy in that moment. I pressed my palm to the photograph of us three that still hung above the fireplace. The months that followed brought new battles. Sophia tried again to keep control, to dictate who would be close to the child and who wouldn't. But Michael stood firmer now. Slowly, steadily, he carved out my place. Not as an accessory, but as a grandfather. When their daughter was born, Michael placed her in my arms first, after Sophia. Tiny, perfect, her hand curled around my finger. "She'll know her grandmother," I whispered, "and she'll know me." Michael nodded, eyes glistening. "I promise." Now, as I sit in my living room, the silence feels different. It is no longer a void, but a pause. The gentle exhale between laughter and footsteps. On weekends, the house fills with noise again. Michael's laughter, Sophia's quieter voice, and the coos of a baby girl discovering the world. I will never forget how close I came to losing my son, to surrendering to erasure. But survival means refusing to vanish, holding on to love even when it's battered and nearly gone. Margaret's photograph still hangs above the fireplace. Sometimes when the baby lies in my arms, I look at her smile in that picture and whisper, "We made it, Margie, still ours, because love survives." Even when others try to erase it, love finds a way to write itself back into the story. And though the scars remain, hope has come home again.